All right, well, welcome to the Small Town Pastor Podcast. This podcast is a ministry of the Small Town Network. We exist to make disciples, train pastors, and plant churches in smaller communities. My name is Eric Nielsen, and I'm joined by my co-host, Tony Colomb. Say hi, Tony.
Hello.
And today we are privileged to be in the presence of my friend, Marcelino Canuas. So, Marcelino, welcome to the podcast. Have you
Awesome.
ever
Thank you
been
for
on a
having me,
podcast?
guys.
Have you been on a podcast before?
Twice.
You're about to be like internet famous because of this one, I'm telling you.
Oh my goodness. Let's go.
Okay, man. So listen, we're gonna start off by let me just quickly say, so Marcelino is the third church planter to sign up with the Small Town Network. And strictly speaking, you're not actually going to be planting in a very small town. You're going to be heading to Flagstaff,
Mm.
Arizona. But it was less the small town thing and more like the kind of church we're planting, I think that drew you into that. So we'll come back to that. But Marcelino was actually on staff with my son down in Phoenix at Christ Church of the Valley. And my son says to me one day, I work with this guy who I think might want to plant a church someday. And because it's me, I'm like, I need to talk to that guy. So we had breakfast at Black Bear Diner.
Yeah.
I think on Christmas, like while I was in Phoenix on Christmas vacation,
Yep.
which may got me in this much in trouble with my wife. Um, and Marcelino picked up the tab, so I'm like, I like this guy. He's
I,
bald, he buys breakfast, and he's interested in church planting. So
Mm.
that was kind of how I met Marcelino. And then I got to see him at my son's wedding and on and on. But that's kind of our backstory. But Marcelino, why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about you and your wife and kind of your spiritual journey, like how you guys became Christians, disciples of Jesus, and then we'll kind of get into like the church planting stuff at the end.
Absolutely. So, like I said, my name's Marcelino. Married for 21 years to beautiful bride Elizabeth. We I grew up Catholic. She grew up Jewish. We met at Arizona State University. And got married about a year after we met. It was a very quick marriage. And throughout our upbringing, I really didn't want to do anything with organized religion at the time. I kind of went out into the world and wanted to do the worldly thing. Met my wife in college and got married shortly after. And we decided to be, these parents that were going to raise our kids knowing Catholicism and Judaism, and it was going to be great. It created a lot more confusion than anything else. But so when we had kids, we had cashews, as we like to call them. I'll wait a second,
Are
see
you
if that
serious?
joke lands.
That
Uh,
is hilarious.
but yeah, so as we were going through our marriage, we were about I want to say 10 years in. Um, we were just struggling. There was a big void in our lives. We tried to fill it with things and stuff, and that didn't work. And then we came to the point where we were pretty close to the verge of separation, divorce. But my wife really wanted to make it work, and I wanted to make it work myself, but I just didn't know how. We were looking for church. We went back to Catholic church. We thought about going back to us, going to synagogue, but that didn't work out until we found a church as we're driving down the freeway. It had the CCV logo. It looked like people doing yoga.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, my wife was looking it up. She goes, "It's a church." And I'm like, "All right, great." Um, we went. We decided to go, um, and it was just completely different. The experience was different. I really pushed it. I didn't want to be part of any of that, but I saw after the first service how my wife, she changed a little bit. She was different, and I couldn't put my finger on it. The kids wanted to go to service. I would ask, "Hey, Dad, are we going to service this weekend?" And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Well, if this is going to keep things at bay, then I'll just keep on doing this church thing, right?"
Kind of a band-aid for your marriage. Is that
Absolutely.
okay?
And I remember we were being in service, and I saw my wife get very emotional. I'm like, okay, she's drinking the Kool-Aid. Um, so I remember leaning into my wife and whispering, "Don't drink the Kool-Aid."
Don't drink the
Mm,
Kool-Aid.
that's hilarious.
So
That's so
um,
funny, man.
she looks over to me just with this look of a little bit of disgust, but more of like, okay. Um, and then worship. I saw people getting up, raising their hands, or like they say, holding the TV down here, that kind of thing. Um,
Holding the TV. I love it.
This guy's
um,
hilarious.
so I found that silly because where I grew up, music in church wasn't allowed. It
Mm,
wasn't a thing we did,
mm,
at least traditionally Catholic. So I thought it was weird. I saw people being emotional. I'm like, you're in public. You don't show your emotions in public.
mm,
Kind
Mm,
of goes to show how I was raised a little bit.
sure.
Um, so anyway, we are in service and I see this and my wife's just different. I see a change. She wants to start getting plugged in. She wants to serve. I'm like, okay, like I said, I'm playing along. I'm like, she's keeping happy. Things are getting better at home. So this will solve. This will be the band-aid to our problem for right now. And then it came one day, we were serving out and we were greeters at one of the entrances. And I was really enjoying that because I get to high five the kids and, make my little, silly dad jokes, as people were coming in. And it felt nice. It felt nice. And we felt welcomed by the church.
mm,
We felt like, oh, they want us here. They were, I felt people were pouring into us, which is, I think, is something you really need when you don't have Christ in your life. You're looking for that. It was filling the void that we had.
Mm,
One day, we're in service and everybody's worshiping, and I'm like sitting down, grumpy old man, drinking my coffee, like I don't want to be here, but I'm here for my wife, and this is kind of cool, but okay. Then at the time, Don Wilson was leading our church,
mhm,
and he was still teaching a teaching pastor. And I remember service starts, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, okay, what is this guy gonna say today? And for a brief second, I'm pretty sure I don't know if you've ever felt being alone in a room full of people.
mm,
Like there's just a bunch of people, but you feel like you're by yourself. I'm sitting there, message starts, and I feel like the room goes dark. And the only two people I see is Don and me.
huh,
And I'm like, okay. And he's talking to me like I'm talking to you. He's pointing at me. He's doing these things. And I lose it. I lose it.
mm,
I felt what my wife felt.
mm.
From that moment forward, I was like, okay, God, you're doing something in our lives.
yeah.
This is where you need us to be. So that was in 2016. And in January 2017, my wife, both and I got baptized. We
Okay.
accepted Christ.
That's
Awesome.
amazing. The quote
Yeah,
of the
so
day, the quote of the day is going to be a cashew wrapped
Oh
up in
man,
Jewish. I'm still like laughing about.
dude, that's hilarious. But I
you
think
know,
it's
I use that sometimes and I get crickets
uh-huh.
Oh, it's
and
so
it
good,
takes a
Oh,
man.
that's
minute.
hilarious, man.
And some people are like, oh, they get it right away. Some people
Oh,
don't. So I'm glad you guys got it right away.
What
and
were you
I
going to say,
think
Tony?
I think it's just really encouraging, really cool with your story so far that you shared is like, you go in with this intention to like put a band-aid on your marriage, like, okay, happy wife, happy life. Let's not like upset the apple cart. But then it's like you're talking about sitting there telling her not to drink the Kool-Aid, and then in the next sentence you said you're there greeting and like high-fiving kids. And I just love like that church got you guys involved before you were even baptized or members or anything like that. And that changed your lives really, was a part of the process for you getting to that point.
Yeah, I would really say that that greeting team really introduced us to community.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Like even within that greeting team, they would have like monthly gatherings in their homes.
Hmm.
So we would go, it was Pollock style. We would just talk to people, and it was the beginning of also small group for
Right,
us. So
Oh,
yeah, it
okay.
was really cool to see that transition from like, hey, you're just serving to we're pulling you in little by little. Now you're gonna come visit and break bread. Now we're gonna get you into a small group.
So let's fast forward. So how do you go from a guy that doesn't want to drink the Kool-Aid to like drinking it, getting baptized? and
Hmm.
then like you're on staff at Christ Church of the Valley. So give us like a quick like how did that go down?
Right. So my background is in finance and education and nonprofit work. That's where my wheelhouse is. One of the things my wife and I did, both of our parents passed from pancreatic cancer. So we
Oh,
were very much involved with the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network here in Phoenix. She was the affiliate chair, and I was the volunteer fundraising chair. While being at church and getting to know some of the pastors, one of them had asked as we were having coffee, um, what I did for a living, and I shared, and I told him about our volunteering. And one of the pastors that we knew was exiting the church to do something else. And the thing that what they wanted my help with was the volunteer recruitment to get work with volunteers and that kind of stuff. And also, since I had starting doing we started leading groups, and then my wife and I also did work with Apartment Life, which they go into apartments and they do community events that
hmm.
lead them to going to church kind of thing. So we
Okay.
were doing that, and there were something that they were interested in kind of shepherding or helping with. So they said, "Hey, we feel like you might want to, come on staff." And I'm like, "I'm thinking not." So because I'm not cut of that cloth, and at the time, um, financially, I was doing really good. I was like, I'm happy. Like we're in a good spot. And then
You're
it
not
was
looking for a pay cut.
I'm not looking to,
Yeah.
yeah, no, exactly. So it was one of those things where it took a lot of prayer, and it also took God. And this, I think, this is the only time I've heard God's voice audibly
Hmm.
was I heard him say, "You need to serve me."
Wow. Wow.
But the funny part is that I was in my office at the school district at the time, and we were having these conversations. I'm like, Lord, I will only do this if you tell me to.
Hmm.
And he said, and shortly after prayer and days went by, I heard a whisper, I need you to serve me.
Hmm.
I was like, are you sure? And it took a lot more prayer
Was
and
that really
discipline.
God's voice or my head? Yeah.
Right. That's exactly what I said. Is this is
Been
this
Uh-huh.
there.
me trying to convince myself? But
Hmm.
anyway, long story short, we went from that. I I accepted the offer, and the greatest thing is that we have never been without,
Mhm.
even with 50% of my pay being cut. It was pretty close to it. So, and again, we're here. Started at as what they call the guest services or first impressions pastor at the time.
Hmm.
Um, and this allowed me to also, I know what a pastor is, but really it allowed me to see what it is to do life with people and shepherd people through.
Mhm.
Because as a first
Yeah.
impressions person, that's all I did. I greeted people. I made sure they had a great experience at church. It developed that in me that I didn't know I had, that I did have.
Hmm.
Then about 2 years doing that, and then 3 years as an associate pastor, which at that point I was more doing funerals, doing weddings, doing all this stuff.
A lot of
So
pastoral care.
yeah,
Mhm.
pretty
Yeah.
much that was my main end group. So
Hmm.
So you were at the Levine campus
yeah,
and you were actually part of like the startup team that helped start that campus, right?
right. So we were the launch team for the Living Campus. So
Okay.
coming out of Avondale, they were going to plant this church, and Ryan Malone, the campus pastor, was actually the Stars pastor at the Avondale campus when I first arrived
Oh,
there.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
And then shortly after that, about a year later, he went to Verrado to become the kids pastor and Stars pastor. And then whenever was asked to, come on board as the campus pastor, and they made the announcement, I was like, "Hey, Ryan, if you need somebody, I'm here."
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where he was looking for someone that was bilingual, that spoke Spanish, and kind of had that heart for pastoral care and ministry,
Right.
and which became really really handy at Levine.
Yeah, well, and that's where my son then was on staff with you
Yep.
working. My son worked with children and then he made the introduction that I alluded to previously.
And he was a resident at Avondale too. That's where his residency
Oh, that's
started.
where his resident. Okay, so you knew him prior to Levine.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. All right.
yeah.
So you have breakfast at Black Bear Diner with
Yep.
this guy from Idaho who's a
Mhm.
pastor of a small church, and he pitches you on taking another pay cut,
Yes,
leaving
I'm living through it right now.
one of the top five ch the five biggest churches in the country, to go to a smaller community than Phoenix,
Yep.
and start something from scratch. And it wasn't, we just talked with John a few minutes ago, and John was like, the first time I talked to him, he's like, we're gonna do this. You know, that wasn't how it was with you. So
Absolutely not.
yeah, so tell us what are you thinking? Why would you do
So
this?
if we go back to about 3 years into doing ministry, um, I find it. I think what changed for me is community. I'll use that, and I use that time and time again. Community. People need to do life in community.
Mm,
But what's interesting sometimes when you have a big church is that people get lost,
mm,
and sometimes our focus becomes not the people, becomes something else. And as we were talking about church planning, I wanted to be able to do something that was going to impact more of the development, the growth of people's spiritual journey. And as I was reading and I was, discovering what my voice really is I wanted people to know what it was like to live the life that the disciples lived. What was it like to be with one another all the time, to learn from one another, to do the way that God lived his life, to be with him, to be more like him, and to be
mm.
Become like him.
what
Yeah.
he did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at the time I was really um I wanted to be part of this big church, which is great, but I wanted to be something more that was more focused on the people, on
Mm.
the and not that the church isn't hear my heart, that's not what I'm saying.
Right.
More on discipleship, more
Yeah.
on let's focus on the growth more of the individual without worrying so much about how many seats I have in my building.
Mm.
Right.
And I saw more and more of how people got baptized, and I would see them for a couple of weeks, and I would see them go and not come back. And I would wonder
Yeah.
why. What are we doing? What are we not
Yeah.
doing?
That's the worst, man.
Yeah.
Mhm,
And then
mhm.
sometimes with as many people as you have, there's one person that can do a lot. We're limited to our time, and I can't try to shepherd 1,000 people. Um, but anyway, as we're having conversations, my fear was how am I gonna support my family? How am I gonna do this? Like I don't know how to do that. And like, who is this guy that's gonna be able to pastor at church by himself? Who is this guy that's gonna be able to figure that out? And then again, it was kind of the same thing from transitioning from the marketplace to the church is God needed to tell me, hey, this is what I want you to do. Because
Mm,
I could do anything I want, but if God doesn't set forward a path before me, what am I going to be successful? And when I was talking to you, Eric, and you were painting some pretty good pictures, there was always fear in my heart.
Mm.
How is this going to work out? Like, this is great. I want to do this. Sure, I want to plant a church.
mm,
But it took a lot more of me kind of sitting through this growth period because the 5 years of CV were great for me. I think it was preparation for today. The
mm,
last 43 years of my life have been preparation for what I'm doing today.
mm,
So it took listening to God, discernment to him to say, hey, it's time for you to go.
mm,
I need you to serve me, but not in a safe place, in a place where you're going to be tested.
mm,
Your faith is going to be tested. Do you trust me fully?
mm.
Mm.
Yeah. So you're making the transition, and we said at the beginning you're going to Flagstaff. Is that right? Why Flagstaff? What about that is drawing you there?
As as my wife and I are thinking about, okay, where could we go? Where would God call us to, or where is He calling us to? Um, we've always enjoyed Flagstaff, but also I have some students because I do students ministry still
Mhm.
that are in Flagstaff. They live in Flagstaff, and one of the biggest things I would say is like, there's never a church that we go to that I feel like we belong to. And obviously, they're comparing it to what they know, which is CCV,
Sure.
right? And that's something to compare to a different church. Like, hey, it's hard to find that. But they were looking for a place where they felt welcome, they felt seen, they felt like they cared about them, not just because they were a number in the building, but it was because I want their spiritual growth to happen. And one of the things that I see in most churches um, is that they do a really good job preparing this youth up until high school.
Mhm.
From the time they leave high school, which is college time, to life, they
Mhm.
start making some really bad choices, some bad decisions,
Mhm.
and there's nobody there to guide them through that.
Yeah.
So as we're looking at Flagstaff, and I'm having conversations with those students, I feel like maybe this is a place where we could do that. We could fill that gap. But I don't I the hope of this church is not to be college ministry, but to really serve the community of Flagstaff.
Mhm.
There's a diverse community. I mean, the biggest employer of Flagstaff is the university.
Right. Okay.
They have a dog plant, a food, dog
Dog
food
food?
plant, Purina.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
it's the second biggest employer there. There's a lot of families, there's college professors.
Right.
So there's really a diverse group of people that really need Jesus there. A
Mm.
lot of the things that happen in Flagstaff, when I use the word liberal, I don't mean in the sense of politics, but
Sure.
the lifestyle is very liberal.
Right.
So
It's a
to show
college town.
this
Yeah, it's got
presence
more
in
of a liberal vibe to it. Yeah.
Yep.
say that again?
Yeah, just it's a college town, which
Right,
tend to have more like a liberal vibe, more arts
right.
and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I get
Mhm.
it. So it also has, by the way, Tony, world-class elk hunting up in that area. So
Oh, if you don't think that I already know about Flagstaff, you're fooling
yeah.
yourself, bro.
Okay, I'm just saying like
I'm
that's
trying to figure out someday down the road how to buy property in northern Arizona
I
for
know,
that
man.
specific reason.
We should
So,
talk. Maybe we could chip in because I've thought about the same thing, like retiring up
uh-huh.
there, especially if my kids stay down there.
And apparently we're going to have a good church to go to the weeks we're there for
Heck
hunting.
yeah, man.
You're always welcome.
Um,
Yes.
so hey, Marcelino, one of the things just kind of occurred to me that I don't know if we mentioned it before, but it just kind of like I was thinking about it and going, this is interesting because like for me at my church plant, my kids are 26 and 28, and we're reaching a lot of 26 to 28, early 30s people that are basically just getting married and having kids, which is the same season of life that my kids are in. And your kids are about to start the college experience. Your oldest is going to graduate this year, and that's why you're kind of holding off doing the move till next year. Um, and you're heading to a college town and you have college age kids. And I do think there's something about your age and stage of life that it doesn't mean you can't reach people outside of that. And certainly we have younger people and older people at our church, but there is kind of this weird like life stage thing that happens where you find that it's really easy to talk to people that are your age or your kids' age, or, like when I was a youth pastor and then I went to become a church planter the first time, I really connected with teenagers still and the parents of teenagers. Now that I'm an older guy and I'm a grandfather, I feel like I really connect with people that have little kids and I hate teenagers. Like I just do not at the moment, the season of life I'm in, I do not relate well to middle school and high school kids. And I love them and we have them and someone's going to bust me for saying that, but
Mhm.
like they're not my favorite people to be around. But like people that are just married and starting off with kids, man, I could talk to those people all day, but they're in the same life stage as my kids. So I wonder if this timing of this of going to Flagstaff and having it be a college town and you and your wife being parents of college age kids might be part of like the secret sauce to this church plant. So I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
We'll find out. Okay, so in our remaining few minutes,
Mhm.
the church is called Northern Pines Christian Church, which I
Yep.
think is awesome.
Right.
And the website, which is not quite up yet, but will be in a month or so, is northernpines.cc, right?
Mhm.
For Christian church. And what's the vision? So like you're going to go to this town. We should mention your plan, like all of our planters and myself, to be bivocational.
Absolutely.
Um, move there, your wife's going to work, you're going to work, and then you guys are going to work together on this new church. If someone who said, "Tell me about this new church, what's it going to be like?" What would you say?
We are a church that is centered around disciple makers, a church that wants to uh, show people the way of Jesus. We want you to spend time with Jesus, to be more like Jesus, and to do as he did. Community is important. We want people to be in community. The church experience on a Sunday is great. Um, what happens in people's living rooms, that's where life change happens,
Right,
right? That fellowship, that's the focus. And again, and I really reiterate that the focus is not Sunday service. It's great. The focus is what happens in living rooms. And that's really the focus of the church. We want to be a church that that raises apprentices of Jesus. Discipleship is great, but we want people to be more like Jesus, to live a life that they every day is. It's like when you want to become a good athlete. You eat, breathe, sleep that sport. We
Mhm.
want people to look at the Bible the same way.
Mhm.
We want people to search after a relationship with Christ in that same manner. So that's important. And two, we want to be a church that plants other churches.
right
Mhm.
on.
We don't want to be a church that grows and like, okay, what's our next campus? We want to be a church that finds leaders within the church that have the same calling that I had to go out and plant other churches. And we want
Mhm.
to support that as well. So that's the church you're going to be part of. A
Mhm.
church where you're going to meet good people, people that are going to bring you in regardless of where you're at in life. They're going to meet with you, they're going to love you, they're going to help you grow, and then God's going to do his work and develop you, and then that's Northern Pines.
Yeah, man.
Awesome.
I love that. You know what?
That's great.
I'm excited about all of our plans, but I'm really excited for you, man. Like I
Hey,
like you. You're a guy that I'm betting on. I just have this quiet confidence that God has uniquely prepared you guys for that community, and I'm just so excited. I wish you guys were there already and we could like, be cheering you on. So you're kind of in the startup phase right now. So you've since left Christ Church of the Valley and you're kind of working part-time doing some other stuff, kind of gearing up for the move and the transition. And I want to point out, like we did in our last episode with John, is that you also were not formally trained for ministry.
Mhm.
Um, so the things that we normally think of in a lot of circles when we think of church planning, we're like, we need a guy that's a Bible college graduate. We need a big budget and a lot of money, and we're going to start up a big show and get a big crowd, and then, maybe someday we'll try to figure out how to disciple them once we get a crowd gathered. That is absolutely not what we're doing at Small Town Network.
Mhm.
It's not what your vision is. And so you're literally talking about moving to a community where you know no one, start working in the community, volunteering in the community, serving in the community, meeting people, gathering disciples, and from the overflow of discipleship will come the church.
yep.
And I think that's so important because, I was kind of being cynical a minute ago, but the first church I planted, that's kind of how we were taught is
Mhm.
like gather a big crowd because that's what's going to pay the bills. You got to get that church up to 100 quick so you can pay the bills because your support's going to run out. And then whatever you do after that, it's up to you. You can disciple them or not, but we're trying to go about it the opposite way and saying, hey, the first priority is the Great Commission. Let's start making disciples from day one, and then from the overflow of that disciple making, a new church will be formed.
Mhm.
And so we're obviously a little bit out. You're talking about moving basically a year from now to Flagstaff. So we'll absolutely, want to get you back on and do an update. But if
Yeah.
if there's anything you would say to people kind of closing down here about someone that maybe is in your situation where you're like, hey, I've had ministry experience. I may not be like the stereotypical church planning, candidate. If there's any encouragement you could give to someone who's thinking about planting a church or trying to do what you're going to try to do, what would you say to them? Any advice?
Man, I would say if you feel called to church plant, and I'm not going to tell you that everybody else has told me it's hard, it's difficult. I'm not going to tell you that. What I'm going to tell you is to really follow God's ask. If He's asking you to do it, trust in Him
Mm,
that He's going to take care of you, that He's going to lay a path in front of you.
mm.
Right on,
That's what I
man.
would say.
Well, hey, if anyone's interested in Marcelino's work, if you're ready to move to Flagstaff and join a church plant, or if you have $1 million that you don't know what to do with, you can actually contact us at Small Town Network. There's actually a giving link on the it's smalltownnetwork.com. You could actually do a drop down and support Marcelino's church plan if you want to do that. And if you're interested in contacting him, you can just contact us at Small Town and we can link you up. But really excited for you, man. So great to have
Mhm.
you on. And
Thank you. Thank
I've
you
been
for having
telling
me.
Tony about our church planners, and so today we're filming all these episodes with our
That's
church planners,
awesome.
and so
Yeah.
I'm excited for him to get to meet him and some of our friends that are
Yeah.
already supporting churches that don't know you guys yet to have a chance to kind of hear your story. Your wife, Liz, I kind of thought you might be able to pull this off, but when I met Liz, I'm like, okay, game on. Um, she's
That's
like
cool, man.
she's the
Yeah,
force multiplier
That's very
for the
great.
thing that God is going to do with you
she's
guys
the one
at
that makes me
Flagstaff.
better.
Yeah,
She's the
man.
one that
So
makes
let
me.
me I'll just do our little outro thing and we'll kind of wrap this up. Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in Small Town Network or what we're doing, we'd first ask you to like or subscribe. You can find us online at smalltownnetwork.com. If you believe the importance of planting disciple-making churches in smaller communities, we'd love you to prayerfully consider partnering with us in prayer and financial support. You have been listening to the Small Town Pastor Podcast. See you next time.